good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We are very welcoming you to our last, at least for now, session about tenant-to-tenant migration. And as always, I would like to start with a short introduction of everyone who's involved. And no, we didn't change the look of Raphael and we didn't change his name just accidentally. Raphael had to go to another meeting on a short notice. So actually, it was planned to be with 5 people here in this meeting, and we are very happy to say hello again, Ruud. We also want to hear your short introduction. But as we do the short introduction, I would like also learn what is your thought about the topics of this mini series. We already had 7 sessions, so actually 7 hours to learn a lot about tenant-to-tenant migration. And maybe something you have learned, something you are a specialist about, and you want to share to summarize it a little bit. So, who wants to start? Thomas?
I can, sure. So, ladies, gentlemen, and our dear followers of our mini series, very welcome. I'm Thomas. I'm an MVP since 2012, focusing on unified communication, which means like today Teams, and a solution or enterprise solution architect for large tenant-to-tenant migrations, mainly across the world, but focus on Germany. So, and nice statement for today. Even if it's the last series, even today I learned something new, which was never happened during the last years.
All right. So let's make the round with a short introduction and then we talk about the different topics. So, who wants to be the next?
I'll go. Hey
All right.
everyone, Vignesh here, and yeah, once again, happy to be here. And I'm also a Microsoft MVP in M365 apps and services. So I'm really glad that we made it this far. I think we have been doing this series for almost 3 months now, if I'm not wrong, and I'm really glad that we made it till the 8th episode. I haven't really done anything like this in the past, and I'm really super excited. And thanks everyone for all the support that you have given so far. Thank you.
Thank you. So, next is
Yeah.
Ruud.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm Ruud Gijsbers. I'm not an MVP, and I'm working mostly on tenant-to-tenant migrations at my current employee. And there I'm also the community of practice lead for modern work, which also entails tenant-to-tenant migrations. And my main expertise is devices, but yeah, like Thomas said, you learn every day. So I also learned during this series.
Great.
All right. So, last but not least, myself. Michael, I'm also an MVP for M365 apps and services, basically because I talk about Microsoft Teams a lot. This is also the main topic or one of the main topics of my company. We are also doing some user adoption, change management projects, and yeah, that was my topic. If you're interested in user adoption, you can have a look into our episode 7. This was almost 1 hour just about user adoption and why it's important, why it's actually not only training, and what you should consider during these different steps. So don't underestimate this. And this is also my summary for this whole mini series. The first part was I underestimated how it went from the initial from the topics we should talk about. I just thought, yeah, there's not so much stuff there. It's not possible. Maybe 4 sessions, that's enough. That's absolutely, and maybe we should keep it a half an hour, and then it's done. And I just learned so much during all these different hours with different aspects, and I think I'm still not possible to describe every aspect and talk about everything. I still need some experts in these different areas. So it's still hard to bring in all these topics. I learned a lot, really a ton. So we would like to start with a personal summary to focus on specific topics. And in the meantime, I will double check with Raphael, who slipped into this. I will see. So,
Cool.
Thomas.
Yeah, guys, again. So my summary is actually where I started with also the nice documents, or both nice documents on SlideShare, which I share with you all, and where the statement is in don't underestimate. And it is not only complex, it is also not hassle-free, and that's one of the most important statements. It is never ever seamless for the users. There will be always some pain involved. That's why I always emphasize communicate correctly to your users, do the user adoption again, take them along the journey, just do some clear ups and all those stuff. It is critical, important, and maybe one other ask. I can only repeat Michael. At the beginning, yes, we don't know what to talk about. So, but then we figured out, and that's all thanks to all your support and all the questions also coming up, that we can talk much more. So topics which we have completely not touched is an automation, so an orchestration, automation of the migration. Because if you have 10, 20, or 50,000 users, what does this mean? Also different aspects or cost finding and things like this. That could be all continue if we get your feedback and you want to see us all again. So that's my statement. Thank you so much. And I'm happy Raphael is also there. Hi, Raphael.
Hi, Raphael. So
Hello.
maybe you could have you can introduce yourself and have a short summary recap, however you call it.
First summary, a very good drive from Berlin. Welcome from Darmstadt or Darm Stadium. Hopefully every one of you remembers this location from Microsoft where we have these Microsoft pre-Ignite locations. Everyone's that was a location with a very big elevator. Okay, back to me. My name is Raphael. I'm MVP and RD, and also the a compliance guy and lawyer and all of these things together. And I'm happy to represent a little bit of these compliance topics. And my summary of these 7 parts of tenant-to-tenant migration. You have a lot of topics, and you have a lot of topics you have to bring together. And one topic is compliance, where you have everywhere from adoption to questions like, and this was one of my favorite questions, do we have to move every data into a new tenant? Because in the due diligence process, another company brought the company, and do we have to move all the data? And we recognized, yes, we have, and we have to do, or we try to move all the data. And my best summary or best learning to have this discussion with all of you is think at first when you create a tenant about tenant-to-tenant migration. And when you implement tools like SharePoint, OneDrive, Exchange, at first think about tenant-to-tenant migration into data, move data into and move data out of the SharePoint, for example, or Exchange from mails into and out to of Exchange Online, or into this tenant, out of this tenant to another tenant before you implement a tool.
Thank you and welcome again. Before we go a little bit more into the different topics, just it was definitely too many different points you have to consider. But actually, I would say 2 minutes to talk about these different aspects. Just summarize one of these or 2 of these different 7 sessions. You can put your questions into the chat. So if you want to raise a question live, we prepared something. We got a lot of questions. Thank you very much for all the questions we already got. So we published forms actually, and we got a ton of questions. Thank you very much. Really, really appreciate it. But if you want to raise a question live, feel free to put it in a chat and we bring it up here. All right. Because I'm actually talking right now, so let me start with user adoption. I don't need 2 minutes. Actually, I need 20 minutes to explain it, but my only statement is think about the people and think how every technical change will also affect the people and, yeah, the stress, I would say, of these people. So that's something you almost forget every time. It's not only the data, it's you actually have a purpose to do this, and most of the purpose or the affected people are users. And you have different users with different needs. Okay, now I took the 2 minutes. Okay, who wants to be next? Ruth, what about you?
Yeah, I can go next.
All right.
Yeah, the topic I covered was devices, and well, if you look at devices, you're also looking at users because they need to use the devices. And the main aspect for that is that, well, you're basically dependent on your source and your target, but the easiest way would be if the users would get new devices so that you can just use Windows Autopilot and things like that. But also make sure that they will that you have configured known folder move so that already the documents, the downloads, the desktop, that those folders are already in OneDrive, so that if you move them from the one tenant to the other tenant, that they will already have their known folders available. And then you have the least amount of impact to the users regarding where they can find their documents and things like that. So that's a great start for to think about when you're migrating devices. And then the other one to think about is user profiles, where your Outlook profile and your OneDrive and your Teams are connected, which we are running into at the current project, where we just remove the profiles and have them created manually again. So those are the main topics I think you need to think about when you think about migrating devices from tenant to tenant.
All right. So Thomas.
No, Vignesh, I guess. I did.
Vignesh.
Yeah.
I did a lot.
Hey everyone. Yep. All right. So my summary is I just want to begin by echoing what Thomas and Michael already said, because if you're talking about this tenant to tenant migration, I think we can talk for 7 hours, 7 days, 7 weeks, even 7 months, and still we won't be done. It's just that there is so much to talk about this, and I'm not over exaggerating this. It's really so much, because each and every single topic keeps getting more and more as we dive deep. Having said that, I want to give my summary on the collaboration area, because that's the place where I specialize. I want to just give away a couple of pointers. So every time you're dealing with collab data, when I say collab, I'm referring to SharePoint, OneDrive, mail, and anything which is in the form of documents or those kind of things. Always try to make sure that not everything that you have in the source has to move. Always take this opportunity to make sure that you could do a cleanup. Always think of the analogy that you're moving from your old apartment to new apartment. You would think that everything is necessary, but only when you start cleaning up things or looking at stuff, you would realize that there is a lot of garbage which you don't really need. So always take the time to do the cleanup. It's really going to help you in the long run. It's going to have a good effect on the migration timeline, the amount that you're going to spend on tools, resources, so on and so forth. And the next important thing is choosing the right tool always matters. Of course, I'm not here to vouch for any specific tool and tell that choose this, choose that one. because each tool comes with its own merits and demerits. If you're looking at a lot of third-party tools, of course, the migration speed may not be that great, but then it gives you a fancy UI where you can pull up reports, do a lot of things, you get alerts, so on and so forth. But if you're looking for a greater migration speed, then now you have the cross-tenant migration tool from Microsoft. So it's a bake-off. You have to choose which one you want to go with and what exactly you want to achieve with the migration. It is throughput or is it speed, or do you want to have some kind of fancy reports and all those sort of things? So I'll leave with that, and maybe we'll talk further about the questions that we have. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, I can hear you double twice. Me too.
Yeah. So
Raphael is back too. Great. Good.
yeah. All right. So we have a bad internet connection on Raphael's side. But it's okay if we get at least your voice. Thomas, have you already covered the topics you were talking about? I know you wrote a book, an ebook, about
Oh no.
about different aspects. Do you may want to highlight something special?
Yeah, it's actually the part also on voice, because that's in this ebook really something awesome to migrate at least enterprise voice, so telephony, in a much more seamless way without a lot of configurations. So that's actually one part where we hardly work on and found solutions also with Microsoft together after fixing bugs after bugs and security risks, which we found, which really makes your life easier. So don't even try to do any other path, just get it done as it is described in this book. Everything else, actually, when I also, because the book was released, if I'm not mistaken, in February, anyhow, if I read it today, so we are now in June, this is 4 months later, I have already, I guess, another 200 pages of paper in my hand. And hopefully there will be this year even a version 2 coming, probably a bit more larger and covering some more areas as well. Also, I need to see when Microsoft is moving certain technologies from a private preview in a public or maybe even in general availability, which also can change your approach. But we need to also talk always a little bit more about the pro and cons, which is actually the tooling. So if you have a seamless migration tool on Microsoft side, seamless means falling back. It's a nightmare, for example, things like this. So like a table with a kind of pro and cons, to do's and don'ts, under which circumstances. That would be something I would really love to build. It isn't easy because it can never ever cover all the topics and it will never ever be complete. But at least it would be something, hopefully, which gives you an overview later.
Okay. Thank you. So actually, this is a Q&A and not a recap summary session. We thought it's necessary to just put some thoughts from our side also here into this conversation. But I would like to start with some questions. And because we had 7 previous sessions, we picked 7 questions of you. So once again, thank you very much for all the sessions we got, questions we got. Unfortunately, it's not balanced, so it's not for every for every session we made is a session question available. I think I should stop talking. Anyways, I will show you the question, and then we will have a look what the answer is. And once again, if you want to put it in a chat, a direct question, feel free to jump in here.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
So
how to migrate a tenant in ABP framework application. And in a earlier discussion, We figured out ABP framework application is something, is a framework with a lot of web applications.
Right.
Yes.
And let's me talk about web application, because at the moment in general, we spoke about M365, so software as a service, so to speak. But there is much more, which is entirely not covered, because certain or some migrations look completely different. If we talk about the entire subject, for example, of Azure, of virtual machines, so like the infrastructure, platform as a service, service or software as a service, and so on, there are complete different projects, and every customer will actually segregate or split it into two different completely independent projects, and that belongs also to the ABP framework. So if you are actually working in the M365 environment, leave applications where pardon me, where they are. So that is important, with a big but. Be aware where your applications, whatever kind of framework you are using, if it's an open source framework or if it's a closed framework on Microsoft, be aware where your data connectors are. And I guess in other questions, we will answer this when we talk about Power Platform. So one thing in regards to Azure migration, that could be even a serious, the same length to all and each and every individual service. It isn't that easy, beside of moving virtual machines. That's copy and paste thingy is the easiest one. Everything else is software development. We are talking here about what you've developed. And that brings me up to one point, I guess, before we come back also to the other questions. Make sure that whatever you develop is fully documented. If you build a fancy, nice app because you can clicky bunti do so, you will fail migrating them. And if you developed something 3 years ago and still using it today and it's not documented, you have no clue what you did. And that applies also to the same frameworks here. So, which means like you need to look into your code, and you need to adapt the specific topics on identities, on security, especially on data. So, which means like the data sync, as well as the data sources, and that needs to be completely analyzed. And then you go via a staging environment and test the application you're going to migrate before you finally do so.
And I would like to add, don't forget the user adoption part. I can do this all the questions now, but especially in this
Indeed.
part, because it sounds like it's not important. I maybe just switch the underlying infrastructure. That's maybe true for the users, but please consider also your admins and your support and the people who work in the IT infrastructure as well, because they are users as well. And if they are not happy and they are not able to help you, they maybe migrate this, but then you have a migrated tool which is not supported anymore because no one cares anymore. Just a pain in the ass.
See, session number 9, Michael. Talking about support during migration. Never ending
Yeah.
story.
Absolutely. Okay, for the next one, we have something we actually didn't touch so much. It was about a Power Platform. We got a question from Ram. Is there any tool or automation script available to migrate Power Apps and flows? Who wants to take this?
I'm looking in my upper right corner. Vignesh, you want, or should I start?
Yeah, I'll begin, and you could do the honors in it, because we have very good stories on this one. So, uh, so when you're saying any tool or automation script available, I mean, you would wish. I think the entire world wishes that there is something for that. But the sad answer is there is nothing really available to automate or any sort of script to migrate Power Apps and flows. But having said that, the way we want you to think about this is, and this is something which we followed in one of our projects. So anything which is, first we would recommend that you categorize your Power Apps and flows in such a manner that anything which is built by citizen developers, which I'm referring to as all these end users, categorize these Power Apps and flows as these were built by citizen developers and this was developed by the organization itself, right? So what I'm trying to say here is any kind of small Power Apps or small flows, those can be exported from the source tenant and they can be imported once again in the target tenant. Maybe this can be achieved by creating a KB article or doing some sessions, whatever works for you, so that users can just follow along and they can do that. But then there is the other side of the story also, wherein you have Power Apps and flows which has connectors, which talks to a lot of other data sources, so on and so forth, and things get really ugly when you try to touch those things. So the straight answer there is there is no really proper or well documented way as of today to migrate these kind of Power Apps or flows. So what we would recommend is try to rebuild once again all these things once again from scratch in the target, because if you simply just try to do the same story as I said, like export and import, it's just not going to work because there are so many underlying pipelines and you might end up breaking it. So that's what we would like to suggest when you're dealing with Power Platform. And with that, Thomas, what's your opinion here?
Yeah, it's actually the same. What I can only emphasize and repeat what you said. So flows is one part. If it's simple, yes, you can export, you can import. That's all fine. So it's like rules you have established in Outlook, for example. Only it's a bit more complicated, complex. So it's visual, and a visual one can be always explained. But if someone even export and import, you need to have support. That's now it's come back to change and adoption topic. You need to help them. You need to be there, and don't overwhelm your support, or maybe build communities at least around the citizen developer. Everything else, which is corporate-wise developed, I hope there are documentations. Get it along with the software engineer. See where the things, where the source, where the data, where's everything. See where the identities, and then actually get it over. But again, it's also a part of you need to tell the user when the application is ready on the target side. And that also comes to the question when you want to migrate it. You want to migrate it in between, at the beginning, at the end. However, what are you doing with your identities? Therefore, yeah, it's a pain in the behind, so to speak, and you will never ever make it perfect for each and everyone. That is I guess, a very important statement. That's the thing what I said at the beginning. There will always be pain, and Power Apps is the greatest pain you can have.
You want to add
And
something?
yeah, I want to add something because we are also in trouble with this because we moved our tenants to another one, and we have the same issue with all of these power flows and simple flows from, we have a SharePoint list and we want to post something into Twitter, for example, to complex flows. And what we do at the end, and this is a little bit against these self-digitalization of my workplace, we have to go back to GitHub and Azure DevOps. So we develop and documentate everything in one of these tools at the end in GitHub. And then we said, okay, this is our connection points. We use the special administrator for this. We have a service account for this, for example. And at the end, when you move from tenant to tenant, that's what Vignesh and Thomas also said. We rebuild it, and we only switch from the service account from one tenant to the other service account. So we switch the connection points, and at the end we have the same flow in the other tenant. And one good hint out of my best practice is when you asked when we have to move flows or Power Apps, I said we move nearby to the scenarios. So we have a Power App for onboarding, with flows, we move the Power App for onboarding and flows. We have a document center in SharePoint with retention policies, flows, and everything. We move all of this project to another tenant. So move in projects or in working points. And every one of us is a data privacy officer. So every one of us is a developer and have to use developing tools. GitHub or Azure DevOps.
Indeed.
That's it. Solution. Back to the roots.
Interesting and painfully. I know why we skipped that topic with more details, actually. We already talked about this, but yes. Because you're the perfect man on stage right now. Yes, because you're exactly the one who actually can answer this question we have got. What security and compliance aspect do we have when we do tenant-to-tenant migration? Admin or migrator must also not be able to view data. Will it be masked due to the compliance aspect? I can guess.
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. A little bit we discussed this, I don't know, in session 3. Was it the compliance one? Okay. Four is my favorite number. So in 4. We have a lot of these compliance aspects, and one of these are also my favorite question in my introduction and recap. If the administrator to see the can we hide them or pseudonymize or anonymize the data for migration or everything? No. Why? Yes, we can do a migration, automatically migration, so we don't have manual migration. So we don't have the administrator who put one data from one tenant to the other tenant by paste and copy. No, we have a process. We have a process, for example, copying all of the SharePoint files from 10 sites to another tenant, and no one have to look into the data itself. But at the end, and this is the challenge of these, and both sides needs an NDA, and both sides needs a contract, what to do and how to do this, because at the end we have issues. And issues comes with anonymization, pseudonymization, encryption, and so we have all these tools. We can protect the data. At the end, the migrator and both sides need to have a view into the data, because when we migrate, and everyone hopefully agree, when we migrate 1 terabyte, we have 2 gigabits of issues of files they are not migrate, which files they are not complete migrate, or which we have files there's no access for the right people that they can work in the new tenant with these files. So what I can say, yes, you need the basement of contracts, you need NDA, you need the migrator to allow to have the view on the data, because at the end, when you go, for example, to Thomas and say, okay, please migrate my data, he needs at the end the control that the right data is in the right place with the right access and with the right rights. Okay, that's very good. With the right rights in the right situation, the right moment. And at the end, please don't pseudonymize, anonymize, or please don't encrypt the files for migration. Migration is, for me, and this is the best migration at the end, is a very open and sensitive migration. So you have to trust into the migrator, and please build this trust at first. Don't think about protect the data into migration. That's it.
That's it. Okay. Thank you. Actually, it was exactly what I was expecting.
Yeah. Often it is easier than we expected, but yes, I do it. I move with, and Vignesh, we talked about it, we move with protected files and labels and
Yes,
DKE files from one tenant to another tenant. But what do
another
we do
tenant.
at
Yeah.
the end? And I have some gray hairs from this, but at the end, we decrypted the data in the first tenant, move it to another tenant, and encrypt the data there
Again,
one more time.
okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Don't play with
Good.
it. It's the hell.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The next question is about devices. And actually, something I just started exploring on tenant-to-tenant migration. Any special recommendations I need to follow for devices? I know we have a dedicated 55-minute talk about this. Maybe the important ones.
The important ones. Well, first, like I mentioned during the recap, make sure that you enable the known folder move so that the impact on the profiles for the users is less, so that they at least have their documents and downloads and their desktop migrated with the OneDrive migration. And on the other hand, try to make it as simple as possible. Don't overthink it. If currently the devices are hybrid joined, then stick with the hybrid join and remove the old tenant and just add the new tenant. That's for current devices. And well, if you need if people get new devices, yeah, then it's easy. Start using Intune, Autopilot, and make use of those tools to give the best user experience, and then the data will follow. And if you are going to migrate to a tenant with where you have new devices, then I would definitely start using Azure AD Join instead of Hybrid AD Join. So that it's a cloud managed device. There are currently, with Azure AD Kerberos, you have the option to also authenticate to your local environment with Kerberos MTLM and get single sign-on. So don't be hesitant to go the cloud managed way for new devices.
All right. Thank you. That was a short one. I always recommend the longer version because there's a ton to know about this. And let's jump into another Power Platform session. And actually, it's something what a bit on top of the earlier ones. The original question was how to use solution to migrate Power Platform in bulk. We already learned that's not possible because there's no tool or something like that. Is there maybe a workaround or something you can recommend? I just had the feeling, so that's the reason why I kept this. During my previous talk, we thought about bringing at least a bunch of users or processes together. Is that something like this?
Maybe I take it. So for sure,
Sorry.
you can do a so-called closed eyes blind migration of everything which is in Power Platform. So that means you extract all the codes and all the things also for the users. You can do it by PowerShell. You can get the flows out, everything, and can just import them. The question behind is, what are you going to do with code which is not working? So that is my question. Yes, it is something like, does it make sense if I have a lot of brickets from a puzzle to actually take that picture which I have and mix it up and bring it to the source, to the target site, and have no picture at all because they are all flipped or that were all white parts because the flavor is got lost? and then you start trying to fix, because then you have a copy and fix mentality. And one thing I can definitely not recommend is fix something mentality, because fix something mentality means you need a huge bunch of people helping others again, and that is overwhelming every organization. Then you lose acceptance and all those things. So that means, yes, you can do it, but you do something which is not worth to do so at all, because the value is or gained zero. That's it.
Okay. Good answer. Also, with the pain points there. Thank you very much. The next one is about collaborative data. How will the migration of OneDrive for Business data migrated to another tenant seamlessly without URL changes?
Yeah.
Once
No.
again, it's not possible. Yeah, once again, a dream, but these are just dreams, right? These can't become reality. So speaking about seamless, yeah, today. mm, I mean, a migration is all about chaos. There is no such thing as a seamless migration, right? But then, what I would like to recommend here is to use the cross-tenant migration tool from Microsoft. We've tried it. We tried it for large enterprise migration, and this is really good. At least when you're dealing with TBs of data, wherein the user, let's say in the source, you're giving users, and there are some organizations which, for the life of me, I don't understand why they give 3 TB or 5 TB of space for one single user. These are just so much of data given to a user. So when you're basically dealing with such large volume of data, please stick to the cross-tenant migration tool from Microsoft, because it basically uses the backend infrastructure from Microsoft, and it's just quick, right? And the second point, talking about without URL changes, that's simply not possible, because you need to understand that in the new environment, the user is going to get a new UPN, right? I mean, it's going to be a different domain attached to it. And if you look at the OneDrive URL, it has the UPN value as a suffix towards it, right? So it's attached to it. So of course the URL is going to change. There is no way that the same URL will get carried over, and that's a given. That's how it's supposed to work. So you are without URL changes, it's not possible. But for seamless migration, yes, please try the cross-tenant tool. It's really good in that sense.
Yeah, yeah. And by the way, I don't know if we can say that, but it's also coming for other SharePoint services. I guess it was announced publicly. So yes, that goes at least super fast,
Yeah.
but it's fast. So you never know what will be
And
migrated
one
on the
hint,
next morning.
and one hint for this question, please put in your mind, OneDrive is for me, Teams is for us, and SharePoint for all. So don't share out of your personal OneDrive business related to everyone in the company, or produce company essential NDA workflow or whatever out of your OneDrive. Please move every single of these data into your SharePoint, and then use the SharePoint migration tool. OneDrive is your personal folder for pictures out of your phone, or drafts or whatever. So
Movies.
yeah, I think we have to do
Yeah.
to say this every
don't do
day.
this.
No,
Vignesh did something. Oh my God.
don't do this.
Videos.
Don't do this. Yeah,
Videos.
don't do this. And in connection, you don't do this. Please don't do this. Yes, we know SharePoint has a limited space, so we have only 1 terabit and some gigabit per license, but this is placed and not the OneDrive. And I saw picture databases in a service user in a OneDrive folder. Do this. You have a lot of issues at the end.
Indeed.
That was the
Yes,
advertising
exactly.
part for moving data to SharePoint or Teams.
Because we are talking about moving data, let's have a last question about the recommendation for a migration tool. Do you are you able to name maybe 3 or 5, 10, 20, or one? Maybe there's just one on the market. And please keep in your mind we are not paid for this advertising, so keep it short.
So, yeah, let's say some tools which definitely work in the background of the entire infrastructure themselves are the Microsoft migration tool. They are super pricey, by the way, but fast, and as I said, not reliable. So you need to
Microsoft migration.
you need to die one death. So then you have several vendors. I mean, we can definitely name a couple.
8-point.
You have ShareGate. You have
Everyone,
8-point. You have
8-point.
Quest.
ShareGate. Quest.
BitTitan, Skykick,
BitTitan.
and so on. What else do we remember?
FMC.
Yeah.
There's so much in the market.
Yeah, there are.
And it depends
More
on
than
what
10.
you do. So that means it's part of an evaluation process. So you cannot recommend just a single tool. First is that will not work. So one statement very clear. There is no such thing like one single migration tool which can be used. There's always something missing or too slow or too problematic, but you need to evaluate what is your goal, how, what, when you want to migrate, and how much money you want to spend. Because it can get easy so that someone has an overview, it can get easy to 30, 40 euros per user license. And that is still some money. If you talk about a large or medium-sized enterprise, 500,000 for a migration tool is nothing.
Heard about that, yeah.
And now every one of you knows why Microsoft is talking so much and discussing about migrate tools from US to Europe, especially Viva Engage, with all of the content. Migration is very, very expensive. That's why we have, for example, for Yammer, a limit of 10,000 users. Above 10,000 users, they will be migrate, or they will be migrate. They don't migrate. They give you a new environment in Germany, but that's every time the question. For example, Whiteboard. Microsoft don't migrate Whiteboard out of USA to Europe. Only when you create new whiteboards will be stored in Europe. So often you have to think about it. What we are discussing, that's the same what Microsoft is discussing when they discussing the EU boundary program, when they're discussing to implement new tools, when they're bringing, for example, Copilot. Every time in every session we have to say something about Copilot from US to Europe. That's always also a migration of functionality. So they have the same challenges. And when I see, and this is a little bit of this, when we talk also about tools, I will combine tools with teams, TT, tools and teams, because I think more and more companies and also more and more Microsoft partner needs migration teams.
Yeah.
They know which tool for which task, and they know how to deal with 10-to-10 migration. In my view, we will see 50% more 10-to-10 migration into the next years.
Absolutely. And then maybe I enhance a little bit where we can think about if we want to introduce it. It will be for sure a little bit company advertising, but we got now the tools and we saw how many tools we have. There are tools which are pure cloud-based. There are tools which can be installed in any kind of on-premises. Also, that's compliance-wise something you should consider to see and evaluate. On the other hand, if you will be in a migration probably with more than 100 or 200 or 300 users, from there it starts that at least 2 tools will be involved. And if 2 tools are involved and you do not have a lot of manpower, you need another tool which is actually orchestrating this. And if I talk about orchestration, then it comes again to Michael's lovely topic of change and adoption, because if you need to communicate to them, that needs to be in sync. You cannot send someone a document how to migrate Outlook so to speak, and then you don't tell him when he is going to be migrated. And you need to do that one very wisely and on time and manner.
Absolutely. And we already reached our limit of 7 questions I've put in here. Actually, we do have 7 minutes, so we are good in time about. But actually, I would like to use the last 2 minutes to say a big thank you to all of you, to not only the audience, yes, of course, the audience, but especially to our speakers here, because everyone is quite busy and we managed to bring this on a regular basis. That's impressive. So thank you very much for your commitment. And yeah, I would like to encourage everyone, if you see this, you maybe missed the session, go and look on the source. You're currently watching this. You can find all the other stuff. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask any of us. If we are not able to answer the question right on ourselves, we know some people, we can connect. And that's the basic idea behind that, why we share this publicly. We want to help you to get an idea about this, think about this, use all the knowledge we already have from our projects, and bring this together into one point, first stop of input source, and help you to start with your project or to get a new idea about different aspects. So that's it.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much once again. It was really a pleasure to have all of you here.
Yep.
Really, thank you very much for jumping in for this complex topic of devices.
You're welcome.
And
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So
Indeed, I really enjoyed those 3 months.
Yeah, this was so much of fun. It was so much of learning and, of course, a lot of fun. I gotta admit that. Yeah.
absolutely.
And a lot of hotels.
On your
Yeah.
side, yes.
And a
We are
lot of
traveling
bad
a lot.
internet connections. We were
Yeah,
able to
yeah.
figure out which hotel has bad internet connections.
So, yeah. After it, when someone want to know which hotels need a better Wi-Fi connection, please ask me.
Yeah.
Raphael has a new consultancy service.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
all right. So thank you very much. If you have any further questions, something you want to learn more about, put it also in the questions, contact us directly. We may continue this series. For now, we stop here and maybe we see each other in the near future. See you.
Yeah, bye
Bye
bye.
bye, bye bye, bye
Bye.
bye, bye bye, bye bye.